Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome and welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And this is Ben
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Well, we're here. We're recording this in 2023, but this is coming out in the new year. So happy New Year, everyone.
That's right. I hope you had a good holidays.
Yeah. We're here to talk about Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Well, I guess we should just say like a brief synopsis if you didn't watch the movie and you kind of want to get a sense of what happens in the movie. In this sequel, Black Manta is trying to kill Aquaman, and he's looking for the best power to do that, and he finds a black trident that is connected to the Lost Kingdom, and that causes like extreme global warming as they burn this thing to keep the energy going, and I'm assuming unfreeze the bad guys.
Yes.
That the Atlantean king froze in a scene that'll come later, and instead of teaming with his wife, someone you would assume he trusts and respects, because people don't like Amber Heard, he goes for his brother who doesn't like him, and they pal around until they defeat the bad guy.
Yep.
And that's the movie.
Yep. That's the gist of it.
So I don't know. I didn't really love the first one. I think we've done 2 episodes on it now. I didn't really love it. So I don't really know what people think the big fall off is here. Like, I don't think this is better than the first one, but I'm just like, for most of the movie, it feels like the same quality of a movie.
Yeah.
I'm
It is
assuming you
consistent.
have a better take on this, because mine is like, I don't get what people are so mad about other than the ending.
I get what people are mad about, and it's because I feel like they were expecting something that would be good, and you're just like, I don't know what led you up to believe that up until this point, through all the marketing material, all the turbulence within production, the reshoots, yada yada yada, all that kind of stuff. It's just like, and not having Momoa confirmed as Aquaman in the new DC with James Gunn, it's just kind of like this whole thing of it had the same doom fate of Flash to me, and I'm like, well, how do I get hyped for this? I'm just strapping in and just going for a ride, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, people said they liked the Flash, though. No one's saying they like this, and
Yes,
to your
that
point,
is
it's
true.
got the same thing. So my question was more like, what do you think people didn't like about this that they seem to ignore about the Flash, or even for me, the first movie, the first Aquaman?
I think it had more to do with the cast than anything else, and specifically Amber Heard in the situation, like how that people were just like drama pooling around that. Easy strings to pick at, easy fruit to pick at, I should say, low hanging fruit. But realistically, I'm just like, what did people expect?
Yeah,
I
think
do get
that's
where.
my big takeaway was like, I will say what I think completely threw me off this movie, but I was just like,
Yes.
I don't really understand how people think the first one is this cool, fun movie, and that this is so far away from that. Like, as I said, I don't think it's better, but I also was like, I mean, I can see how you get from that first movie to this.
Yeah, I do too. And I feel like the first one was there, and it was, like you said, fun and fresh, based in the DC world because of what Snyder had built at the time. And this one, the first one genuinely was fun. It was a different tone. It was all that kind of different stuff, but it was just like, it's same level of consistency. And yeah, I guess the director, the studio can go like, yeah, we already did the whole rom-com aspect with him in the first one. And I'm like, okay, that is true. So we're going to do a buddy cop with a brother. I'm like,
Yeah.
that seems dumb based on the fact that this whole movie seems to be based around trying to establish some sort of family, but neglects family throughout the whole thing because it's like, hey, we gotta do the side quest.
Yeah, so yeah, my one. This has nothing to do with whether or not I like the movie, but I'm pretty sure he says chum liquor to his kid. But that first scene where he's beating up the pirates, it sounds like he says, "And I beat those cum lickers asses," and I'm like, what is this movie? Did he just say cum lickers?
Mhm.
Because he says chum something later on in the movie. I'm like, oh, he must have said chum in that first scene. But um, that immediately was making me be like, I can't get on the same like vibe as this movie because he just sounded like he just said cum liquor. But yeah, I think my big thing is, and I could be wrong about this. My feeling was a part of the plan for Black Manta was he needs a descendant of the king's blood to spill.
Correct. He needs a member
Aquaman
of the
isn't a
bloodline.
descendant of the king though. He's a descendant of his mom, unless they're doing like Simpson rules where Marge was like, "No, when I married your dad, I took his blood too." That doesn't. He's not like he is not the blood of that king, very specifically.
See, you've already outthought this movie. I just
So
went
like
in with it with the idea of
at the end of
turn
the
off
movie,
my
we're like,
brain.
"Oh, you'll do." I was like, "No, he won't." They have the whole conversation about like, "Oh no, like my son is the." I'm like, "Your son has nothing to do with it either. You don't have anything to do with it. Mira has nothing to do with it. Your son has nothing to do with it. It's only Orm. Orm is the only person here whose blood needs to spill because." They clearly state, or maybe they didn't. Let me rephrase that.
Mhm.
But my big thing at the end of the movie was they just set up. I'm pretty sure that it has to be the blood of the king, Atlan.
Yeah,
That king has nothing to do with Arthur. That's part of why Arthur is an outcast because he
yes,
has no claim to that bloodline other than his mom. So when
yep,
his mom comes back and then blah 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 blah, I
yeah.
don't
He's a
care.
nepo baby.
But like whatever. I don't care about that. Like I all I care about is that it is there something I'm missing because I was like this doesn't make sense to me. There's another part that doesn't make sense to me that comes in that same scene,
Mhm.
but just on a logic level, I was like, I must be missing something. He
I
is
think they're
his
doing
mom's
Simpsons rules.
son. He is not. He doesn't have the same dad as Orm. They don't
Yeah,
have that. That part of it means that his blood can't work on that
yeah.
unless they said Atlantan blood. But I thought it was Atlan, like
No,
King Atlan's blood.
I think it's King Atlan because they were like it could have been me or me or me or maybe the baby, and I'm just like, well, this is just silly now. This is bad parenting. I mean, like, at what point did they go like, hey, maybe we should protect this baby? 0 points in this movie.
Yeah, well, I think that's also part of the weird world stuff where they're like
Yeah.
he goes freely from land to thing and they're like yeah no I guess that's fine until they're like wait a minute the people from the land followed you. I'm like why like how has that never come up for you before that he's
It,
constantly going back and forth like I
it,
was constantly like oh like that was a part of like the Wakandan thing like in the comics at the very least of
right.
like stop going outside of Wakanda, asshole. Like
Mhm.
you're our king. You need to be doing this, and that causes friction and intrigue because he's torn between. This is just like I don't know. I go into the office and then I come home and hang out with my baby, and I'm like,
Yeah.
uh, all right. It seems like that council that has India Moore, who I like as an
Mhm.
actress. That council being like, no, fuck you. We're not going to listen to you because you're tied to the surface. I'm like, that seems like this needs to be a bigger part of the movie because
Yeah.
he's that is a valid concern for people who are worried about the earth like not earthlings but like
But
surface
the
dwellers
Atlanteans, yeah.
coming surface dwellers coming and fucking shit up.
It's funny because like, and this goes back to the first one too, where Orm's like he's gonna bring the surface people with him. I'm like, yeah, I don't understand why that doesn't get discussed more. It really does, and it's just like, okay, sure, we get that the first one everyone figured out. Oh, it was a trap set up by Orm to make it look
Mm-hmm.
like whatever. It- but that doesn't like give him full trust to be like, wait, Orm still had a valid point there. How are
A
you
lot
going
of the
back and
movie is
forth?
people being like, Orm, if you hadn't fought that kingfish, you'd be the perfect king. I'm
Yep,
like, this is a weird. I don't know why you're writing yourself into this corner. Of
it's
like,
so
yeah,
weird.
you'd be a really good king, Orm. Actually,
Yeah,
like, fucking Lundgren spends most of the movie being like, I just don't trust you, but also I feel like Arthur sucks at this, and you should be doing it. And I'm like,
yeah.
I mean, so the other thing that's weird to me about the end is that we will talk about more of the movie, but it really is the ending that blew things up for me, which was just like
Yep.
at one point the like Black Trident King, I don't remember his name. He embodies Black Manta for most of the movie, which I feel like they could have had more fun with, but whatever. Like that
Mhm.
scene where he's talking to him in the mirror was really cool. Like
I agree.
we see his face. Like I'm like, oh, like this is because up until the ending, I was like, these are a lot of interesting things in a movie I don't think is working, but at least like,
Hmm.
wow, like there's some really good ideas here. But then he inhabits Orm's body at the end of the movie,
Hmm.
where clearly we have seen Orm has changed. Like he saves Dolph Lundgren. He clearly likes Arthur. Like that's not in. I don't think that's like a controversial thing to say.
No, it's
I
not.
feel like you're like, yeah, they like each other now.
Yeah.
And the bad guy gets into Orm's body and is like, ooh, this one's better because it's Atlantan and he hates you more than the other body. And I'm like, Orm hates Arthur more than the guy who spent the last 5 years trying to kill Aquaman. What
Well,
the
I guess if
fuck?
you're well,
What,
I
what are you talking about?
I forgave it because it was like, okay, you're new to this body, you're seeing the history, the memories, and all that kind of stuff, which does outweigh the recent road trip that they took. It does
It
outweigh
doesn't.
that.
There's no chance it does. You,
I
I'm not saying
disagree.
that there's no hate in there.
Right.
There is no way his hate for Arthur would be more than the person who has dedicated their life and sacrificed everything to kill Arthur.
I
There's
agree.
just no chance.
It made it seem that dialogue made it seem like more of a Venom symbiote kind of situation where it's like, oh, we have to cohabitate. But I'm like, it seemed like it was just more interesting that it was like, hey, I've taken a control a big part of you, and there's no real negotiation here. I'm just going to pervert your brain, like you know what I mean, as opposed to let's try to get along, and he's finding a host,
If
and
it
I'm
was
like,
established that he lied and tried to manipulate, that'd be one thing.
mhm,
But that's not what they were doing. They were
I
just like,
know,
he's just in this body. And
yep,
so I was like, no, he doesn't hate him more. There's no way he hates him more.
yeah, I don't know how that factored in. It really was one of the things where it's just like they did, and I didn't like that because I'm like, oh, this is the second pump fake that you're trying to give us to buy into with Orm not being a changed person, so to
Right, like
speak.
because of the Dolph Lundgren scene where I'm like, obviously
Exactly.
he's gonna save him. Like, there's not
Yeah,
this. Like, the
it
movie
felt
isn't that
terrible.
dumb that like they would actually have him be like, no, fuck you, I'm out.
Yeah, like why are we and not only that, it's just like why are we lingering on the face that he's making right now? It's like ooh, 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 and then he's like, ha, I gotcha, buddy. We're good.
Again, I don't think that's the right take to use, but if you
Mhm.
lingered on him processing like I knew you'd have to like be in my debt at some point. I'm gonna
Yeah.
help you. That's not what his face says. I'm not saying that. But if you were doing something with his character and you wanted to show him being
Mm.
happy that he's like, I knew you were gonna need me at some point. How the tables have turned type thing.
Hmm.
Because he's not like you don't. He doesn't have to be this completely altruistic person. He could be like, yeah, I'm gonna do the right thing, but
At a cost.
see
Yeah.
like see you shouldn't have talked shit because now you need my help
Yeah.
like but like again that's not
Yes.
and I think before they crash the castle or whatever, like before they get to the volcano, I was
Mhm.
like, maybe I'm just being hard on this movie because I know all the bad, like the stuff you said, like knowing that they had bad test screenings, know that they went through
Mhm.
two
Mhm.
Batmans and there's no Batman actually in the movie, like all knowing all that stuff and being like, they're doing a lot of like showing you scenes but having someone talk over it to kind of like gloss over any stuff they didn't actually have to show you,
Yes. They
which other movies do. Like I
yeah.
feel like Mission Impossible movies do that sometimes, and I don't hate when they do it there. So I was like, maybe I'm just being too hard on this. But then I think that comment about this body hates you more is like a glaring thing of like, oh, you forgot something. Like you forgot where you actually landed on Orm's arc because you kept
Right.
that line in, which doesn't make any sense. Or why would like I get that in the comics people are like, oh, he kills the baby, so this is how we get there, but like
Mhm.
his baby doesn't have Atlan's blood. He has Atlantan blood, but like
Right.
but he doesn't have Atlan's blood. So unless everyone's related to that king,
So
in
I'm
which
glad.
case he could have done anybody. He could have done
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah, maybe it's a Zeus scenario where he's
Yeah, like if
underwater
it's the
Zeus and
Zeus
he's got
scenario, then
DNA in
Sure,
everyone, and the whole
whatever.
Atlantis is like friggin' incestual population. No, you brought up the great point with the blood thing, because if they did do the blood thing properly and they thought about the lineage the way you did, which I certainly didn't, I was like, all right, whatever. Yeah, that's a glaringly obvious thing that they missed, that to not guard the baby in whatever circumstance. But it was just, even if that was the case, it would justify, we need to get Orm more, because it's like he can save us and he'll be looking for him. So we can do the, like, all those things would make more sense if it was like, oh, now we're shifting to Orm. And it's like, okay, that makes sense now based
Because
on
you need an
everything
eye
you
on
just
him.
said.
Like
Because
you can't just
yeah,
like everything you're saying. Like you can't leave him in the desert because they're gonna ultimately go for him because
yep.
he's the last person. Because I'm not gonna get into the Amber Heard of it all, but everything about what's in the movie shows that she would have been an asset on this mission, and they didn't
Yes,
really need Orm. And even
100%.
if you consider she gets hit at the beginning, so does
Hmm.
Orm. Like they both get hit. Like it's not like she was completely outmatched if you're going Orm versus her. Like she
Hmm.
has interesting and cool like fight styles and like visuals, and he just kind of runs around and is strong.
Yeah,
Like it just was like I don't really, as you said, there was like a complete like sidelining of family in the movie that was about like really holding
saving
tight to your
family.
family.
Yeah, it was. It's just so weird because it's like the whole movie. He's like, "Dad, how do you do this?" And he's like, "Okay, cool. I'm not going to listen to that right now." It's
That was just a weird conversation. I did not like any of that because I was just
yeah,
like, because it's like he already said like we already have the literal village helping us, and this baby's kicking our ass, and he's like,
yes.
so you're gonna ask the guy that had to raise you on your own, like what? Like, I
I did,
just feel like
yeah.
your dad, and he did. He was like, I mean, your life is more stressful than mine, and also like
Hmm.
this is what I did. I just was like, whatever. It's just when in the moment, which yeah, it doesn't really play into anything. And another thing that bothered me, but I feel like it's a problem from the first movie, so whatever, was he is actively saying throughout the whole movie, I don't like doing this. This is shit. And then
I
he's like, let me go up and fight. That's what I'm good at,
hmm
which he does, and he's fine at it. But then Orman's like, wow, like you really are a good leader. Like, you should be the king. I'm like, no, he just did the thing he said he was
yes,
good at. He wasn't doing king shit. Like,
I
he
agree.
was like, what is happening here? Like, he
It's so
didn't
terrible.
actually do any leading in that sense of
I agree.
what he has stated is the thing he doesn't like doing. He
Hmm.
got to do the thing he liked. That was his thing, and he
It's
did it.
it was so weird where Orm's like, you do king shit because you asked for help. You were humble. You did.
I'm like, Orm, you did
I'm like,
that
that's
too.
not
You were a
king.
schemer, but you did that too. You were like, hey, I'll work with Black Manta. Hey,
Exactly.
I'll work with Dolph Lundgren. I know he has a name. I don't remember anyone's names in these
I
movies,
agree.
but
I was
like,
gonna be like, I do
like
not care enough to look up
yeah,
on
it's
his
like,
name.
yeah, I'll work with Mira's dad and like fuck shit up. And it's like, you did that too. So like, I don't really, other than the movie needs certain things to happen, so they're gonna
Mhm,
happen regardless if they set it up or not.
mhm.
And yeah, so that, and then this is a nitpick, I will admit, but when he gets Orm, because he's like, yeah, well, he's the only one that's like worked with Black Manta, and Orm's like, wow, this isn't the Black Manta I know. I'm like, you didn't know him. You treated him like a pawn. Like you did not respect him at all. You were like,
Yep.
here's money, do the shit. Like,
Yeah.
what do you
It
like?
was a
Just
business transaction. You didn't know him at all.
yeah, just
Yeah,
like, oh
that's
no, this isn't the Orm I like. This isn't the Black Manta I know. I'm
I
like,
did hate that because I was
is
like,
that the thing?
I did hate that because it would imply that they had like several adventures together and that this is the guy Orm is. It's like, hey, every time you work with me, you get this buddy cop dynamic. So that's it. I'm like, yeah, no, Orm never struck me as that. He struck me
No,
as like the guy that wanted to be king. And it's like I see people comparing it to like Thor and Loki. I'm like, no, this is totally different. N- This is like
I I
this
would
is
compare it
totally
that way
different.
only because the
There's
way
no
people
other
like
comparison.
Loki, I
Yeah.
like Orm in this movie in general. Like he
Yes.
seemed to be the only person. That's not true. I think the people that were taking it seriously were clearly Yahya Abdul-Mateen and Patrick Wilson. Like they
Right.
were clearly like, well, one, they got stuff to do, but two,
Right.
they were taking it seriously and actually grounding themselves in
Hmm.
something. Um,
They're professional about it.
yeah, they were professional about it. So
Mhm.
I appreciated any scene he had with anybody because it was like elevated because my complaint about him in the first one is like it doesn't matter. Like that's like acting out a wall. He's just doing his own thing, and he doesn't really care what's going on.
Yep.
He's just like, no, this is my role. I'm doing it. Versus this movie where it seems like he's actually listening and taking information in as an actor, but as a character as well,
Mhm.
and growing. And I'm like, oh yeah, like this is interesting. Not enough for me to be like, this is a good movie, but like it was like, oh, this is interesting at least what they're doing there. But yeah, the whole this that's not the Black Manta. And I was like, what does he mean by that? Because he doesn't know anyone. Like
Yeah, I agree. You use people like servants. Like you're going to be ocean master. Like that was your thing.
yeah.
It's just don't pretend like there was a significant relationship where you would have toasted at his wedding. Like that's just
Yeah,
not a thing.
it's not like, oh man, like that's my friend, or even just like, yeah, like all the missions we ran together, he would never do this. It's like you
Mhm.
did like two things with him,
Yeah.
and then
You
he went
did
on.
the submarine attack thing and the two because the first one didn't go as planned.
Hmm.
It's just like, okay, yeah, you got repeat business out of it. It doesn't make you friends at all
Um,
on
and
any
then
level.
I'm just gonna get the last thing that I can remember that I didn't like, which was the final fight with Black Trident King.
Oh God.
What wasn't a
I'm
fight, but it
glad
was
that you
just like
brought it up.
he throws this not
Is a
spear, he
one-hit
throws
kill.
the trident, and then he's like, oh shit, because it didn't work. And I'm like, okay, they're setting up that he's gonna have to do something smart, and he's like, no, I'll just throw another one.
I'll just do it again.
I'll just
But this
I'll
time
just do
I'm
it
gonna
again.
pose first.
I baffling. Like it really did feel like they were like, whatever. Like this universe is done. Who cares? Like
So it
it really
it
felt
did
like they
feel
were just
like
throwing
that.
their hands in the air.
So it felt like the part that was over for me, the whole thing was just like, all right, I'm going for along for the ride. And then the moment it got too long was when they got Orm back, and I realized we weren't even in the third act yet. And then by the time I realized we're in the third act, how quickly that was over because of exactly what you said, the one-shot kill, where it's like, yeah, do the same thing, but with a gold trident, your
Yeah.
trident. And it's just like, all right, are we? There was no indication to be like, okay, if I get back into my actual form, then I'm going to be more powerful than anything, right? I would have loved if there was some sort of indication being like, oh, this is why I'm jumping bodies. I went from Black Manta to him, and now I'm finally getting to my final form. I would have liked that because it would have made more sense. But then you would have to be like, oh, getting rid of that. I agree that dialogue where it's like, and this one hates Aquaman. Well, I'm like, just get rid of that, and it would have been better.
Yeah.
They do the worst thing of showing you, not telling you, and then
Do you mean
um
telling you, not showing you?
to telling you and then not showing you, and then the things that they should tell us about, they just showed us and expected us to get. And I'm like, this is not good. And I like your points about Mara because it's just like, yes, the reason why she should have been along for the ride is because literally every time Arthur gets in trouble, it's her saving his
She
ass.
saves him at least twice
Yeah,
in this movie
it's
alone.
literally every time. It's like, oh, there's Mira, and then oh, they're pulling the same card again. This is just like she should have just been along for the ride.
Hmm.
And there was
Like
never a
you could
point where,
give
oh, I have to stay here to protect my child. There was never
because
dialogue.
she's
He
never
just
really
left her.
around her kid unless she's with Arthur.
Yes.
Like like, and again, I'm not getting into the Amber Heard of it all. I'm
Mhm.
just saying, in the movie, what we saw, they were pretty content to be like, "Hey, Dad, you look after the kid."
Yep.
And sometimes his mom, is her name Atlanta? Alana? I don't
Atlan
remember.
or
Nicole Kidman.
Nicole
Like
Kidman. Yeah.
Nicole Kidman comes sometimes, but again, seems like only if Arthur is there as well. So like,
Hmm.
it, there was no even conversation of, well, you're gonna have to stay here to protect Junior. It was just
Bye, Dad. Road trip.
bye, see you. Like, so why
Yes.
not take Mira with you, who, as I said, seems very competent in the first movie in particular, and even
Hmm.
though they've reduced her screen time in this and made her basically a non-factor,
Hmm.
completely competent anytime she shows up in this movie too.
Yep. It's just like, hey, we know what the audience is going to want, and every time you show up, you have to do something significant,
Well,
and
just because I was
that's
like,
what
oh,
we'll
they're
do
gonna
in the
kill her.
editing room.
Oh, they're gonna kill
I
her.
could,
Okay, I guess
I
that's how you.
wish they would have committed to killing her with the blast in the beginning. That would have been like, oh, look how powerful he's gotten. He can actually wipe us out. I'm like, cool. And then you would have not had to deal with any of the rest of the stuff and
Yeah,
given that stuff to do with Dolph Lundgren's character.
because
Because
then
that
by
would
the
have made
time they
sense.
blast Orm, I'm like, well, he's gonna be fine because I just saw that
Yep.
Mira was fine. Like,
it's
and I'm not that worried about this.
it's weird because it's like, oh, this is a great opportunity to show off all of our aqua tech that is way more advanced than the humans, because of course they still have that subplot of like, hey, we have to, where Arthur pitches in the beginning of the movie. It's like, hey, I think we should reveal ourselves so that they can use their science and our tech and we can fix the problem together. And
Hmm.
I'm like, all right, he's thought this through already. I mean, it's a very simple plan, but he's thought this through, all that kind of stuff. And it's ridiculous, the whole thing, because I'm like, that's still a side plot, but it's also a major plot, and it's just to get him to melt out of the ice. That's it's not even magic ice too. It's just a magic spell that casts the ice, which is so weird to me. I'm like, why wouldn't it be magic ice at that point?
I don't know what are you talking about? What's that's encasing the
To encase the final boss guy, the guy that's
uh,
hopping around, um,
I don't
possessing
know. I
bodies.
guess I feel like if you think it was magic that made it, what's making it not magic ice, or what does it matter if it's
Because
magic
global
ice?
warming's literally melting it,
But
like
they're
actual
saying it's not
temperature.
actual, like the words they're using global, but they're saying like the stuff they're
Mhm.
pumping is what's doing it, meaning
Yes.
that magic
Oh,
is
that
is
specific?
taking away the magic that is encasing them.
That's disappointing.
Well,
That's it, I mean,
I mean, not really. It just means the movie at least thought of that.
no, it's disappointing that's the thing that makes sense over the bloodline thing.
Oh well, something has to make sense. So it can't be a movie completely devoid of
Yeah.
logic.
I mean, in the conversation you and I have had already, we've talked a way to make Orm more relevant to the actual
Yeah,
thing. And it's just like, hey, you never thought about this one thing properly, or nobody knows here how genetics works. But you're right. I
I
think they're following the Simpsons rule, where it's like
well, well
you're royal blood now, so
yeah.
because you're in the club.
I could be wrong. I've
I don't
definitely
think
been
you're
wrong in
wrong.
the past. I
I do
just
not think
thought
you're wrong.
it's been less than 12 hours since I've seen the movie, and my
Mhm.
memory was that they said King Outland, but they might have not said it. But I just feel like if
No,
it
they
isn't
needed
King
King
Outland,
Atlan
if it's
because
not
he's
King
the one
Outland,
that
then
encased him.
anyone could get it. Then it
No,
wouldn't matter. It wouldn't
it,
matter. Then.
it needed his bloodline because it was his blood that sealed him in there to
Yeah,
begin with.
that's what
So
I
it's
thought.
just, yeah. So you're absolutely right with the whole Orm thing. Like only Orm's blood could have done it.
Anyway,
Uh,
well, what did I
It's
like
just
about this movie?
unless they are telling us that like all of Atlantis' population is basically incestuous.
I think they just didn't think about it. I mean, honestly, I think
They didn't think
this
about
was
it.
just like unfortunate, like rewrites, like filming extra stuff, like just like whatever. Just they
It
probably
is.
knew they wanted to put the baby in danger, and then forgot some very key details.
The one of the hardest things about it too, it's just like, yes, I get they're putting the baby in danger, but it's I think one of the things that suffers to me is that in the first one, at least Jason Momoa was the one kind of having fun. Here in the first act, he's not having fun. He's just like, here, I got like exactly like you said, I don't want to be king syndrome, and then I got to be a dad when I get home. Like we get it. It's tough,
Well, he
but
says that's the only fun he has. He enjoys being a dad, and they show him in like hanging out with his kid.
well, yeah, he does say that. He does look like he enjoys it.
Yeah,
It's just
it's just weird because multiple
they're
times he leaves Mira out of that equation.
oh, 100%.
Like even at the end when he's like, "My name's Aquaman. I'm a brother. I'm a son." I'm like, "You're a father. Like you're a husband
You're
too."
a
He's like, "I'm a
husband.
father." I'm like, "Okay. Like, did they kill her in one of these drafts and forget that they killed her? Like, what is happening here?"
They definitely didn't. They wanted to dismiss her so badly in this. And I'm just like, that's why they should have just killed her with that blast. Like, honestly, it would have actually made the tensions of this movie a lot more because now you're adding grief to it.
Yeah,
It could
I
have actually
think.
given him something to do to be like, hey, now I'm stepping away as king because I'm grieving. Like, I don't, either way, it doesn't matter. It's just like they should have committed to killing her based on how they're going to use her throughout the rest of the movie, which is we're not. Like the fact that they
Well, no,
kept
they
her
can't
alive
because
was
she's the one
so
saving.
weird.
She's saving him throughout, so they
No,
can't
what
kill
I'm
her.
saying is if they just let Dolph Lundgren do those things instead,
Well,
which
I'm
is
saying he
perfectly
should have died.
viable.
I think he should have died, not her.
Someone should have died.
Yeah,
You're
I
absolutely
think
right.
he should have died, not
Yeah.
not Mira. He doesn't add anything to it, and Like he wasn't saving them. He just kept saying fire at will at things.
Yep.
Like, um,
And I'm sorry, but I couldn't understand his dialogue.
yeah,
It's
I
just,
didn't. The dialogue is like,
I mean,
as I said, the more you look into it, the more holes you'll probably find. Like,
mhm.
like the we need King Atlan's blood. Oh no, Arthur, you're in trouble. I don't think knowing what he was saying was going to help the movie.
That's true.
Um, what I did like, I think James Wan does a really good job of. I can't call it world building because a lot of stuff just falls like a deck of cards, but
Mhm.
the scenery he creates is very engaging. I feel.
Yes.
I think he does that really well. He definitely does the horror stuff well. Like the scene where Black Manta comes to get Arthur Jr. was really good. Like the way
Hmm.
his red eyes showed up and then he gets revealed. Like I thought that was great stuff. I think a lot of the stuff they do with people getting dragged and stuff feels like a Sam Raimi type homage type
Hmm.
thing. That's interesting and fun. And when they committed to showing fight scenes, I thought the choreography was cool. Like I
I
thought they did,
agree.
but yeah, I remember like early on they cut it so that you can show him telling his kid how it goes, and I'm like, I guess this could have been fun, but it just feels like you were like, nah, let's not show too much of this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're right. The fight scenes, that is the short list of things that I did appreciate about this movie because I was gonna really, really talk up the fight scene. We might as well, like the Trident fight scenes. I'm like, this is really creative to
Yeah,
show how like he fights in a very aggressive but improvised way, and like Black Manta's fight style is very, very much like trained and through and all that kind of stuff. I'm
yeah,
like, this is fun. I'm really liking this a lot. And I guess they saved it all for that last bit because they wanted to like let you really forget that the final boss is a one hit kill. Um, but it's
yeah,
where they are doing that kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, this is successful. This is James Wan action stuff. I
yeah.
like it.
I do think that that's good stuff.
Hmm.
And I like the Orm stuff. I think the Orm.
Yeah.
Sorry, I shouldn't say I like it. I like the performance, but it obviously is a performance in service of not great writing.
Yes.
But I do like the performance.
Because I really appreciated the cockroach bit. I really, really did. Because I'm like, look how good he's acting this out right now. He's
That
like,
was good, but it was good for both of them because I was like,
yes.
oh, like they're actually acting like big, like that comes out of Arthur feeling a way about something Orm just said. So he's like, hey, why don't you eat
Mhm.
this, asshole? Like, obviously he doesn't know that that's what's happening, but then
Yep.
he's like, I'm just gonna like do this to you because
Mhm.
I'm the big brother. Which I still, he might be older than Patrick Wilson, but I feel like Patrick Wilson is such an adult that I never believe he's the younger brother. But
Yeah.
like, but whatever. Like, I just like, yeah, okay, that is definitely a big brother, like making fun with a little brother thing.
Agree. And
Um,
I do believe that he is the little brother in this because of the way he's like, okay, just of how Patrick Wilson is. It's just like I don't want to be here energy on that whole thing, which makes sense. But I'm like, yeah, that totally makes you like a little brother. It's hilarious and how much fun Momoa is having at his expense. I'm like, yeah, that's total big brother energy. This is
yeah,
it that part is fun because it's just the how serious he is, his character is. I'm just like, yeah, it just comes off as pouty in this. It's hilarious,
yeah.
especially when he does the bridge thing.
Oh boy, I did not like the whole. I thought that was a metaphor at the end. I'm like, yeah, he's using it like a metaphor this time. What are you talking about? Like, what is happening here? The first time made sense because he literally made a bridge, and the second time he made a bridge metaphorically. He's like, oh, I thought that was a metaphor. Yeah, it is, and this is the metaphor.
So it's funny because it's obvious that this movie doesn't pick a direction at any given point, but it tries to do all those things at the best potential it can. Like what I mean by that is the horror stuff is really, really good. The fight
Mm-hmm.
stuff is really, really good. And the comedy stuff is really, really good. But all of those things undercut each other and work against each other in a way. Because I'm just like, pick a lane here. Are we doing horror? Are we doing comedy? Horror comedy makes fun of itself. So is that what we meant by the whole I am Iron Man, Aquaman thing at the end of it? Where it's just like, and it
Doesn't he call him
also,
Loki at one point? Like I
he
feel
does.
like he calls
He
Orm
does.
Loki at one point.
He does. And I'm like,
And I
okay,
know that that's just mythology. Like it doesn't have to
Yes.
be the MCU, but because he does the I am Aquaman thing at the end, you're like, I don't know that Jason Momoa wasn't just referencing the MCU.
So he, and that's the thing. Like toward the last of it, I'm just like, all right, let's go out by yes, let's usher in and recognize that the new head is someone that used to be at Marvel. It's that's kind of funny
Again,
to
this
me.
wasn't. I mean, who knows when they filmed it, but it wasn't made to be the last thing. Like, it wasn't made to usher in the new thing. Like,
I know it wasn't.
so, like,
This could have been one of the reshoots where it's just like, hey, we're not going to come back for three, so let's just have fun. He's going to be Lobo, so let's have fun with this.
maybe this was a reshoot because, yeah, as I said, they went through two. They went through a Michael Keaton Batman and a Ben Affleck Batman who was supposed to
Yeah,
do recruiting. So I can't
tell
imagine the recruiting happened at any point other than the end, and so this would be how they switch that up and get rid of it.
yeah. So I didn't know too much about that, in what the roles they were supposed to do and all that kind of stuff, for this, but that was one thing that did surprise me. I'm like, huh, no cameos from anyone else. They didn't get Gal Gadot.
So yeah, um, I'm whatever. Like they created their own universe, that's
Mhm.
fine. But yeah, it's a movie that really suffers from people knowing that he is friends with other people who could have helped him.
Yep.
And even if you were like whatever, they're going to be underwater a long time. Who wants to watch Superman underwater? Who wants to watch Batman underwater? You're still like Mira would have been the right choice for this, especially the way
Yes.
this movie works. But your fix of being like just make it so that Orm, well, I guess together we came up with it really is only Orm who is in danger of having his
Mhm.
blood spilled and having
Correct.
an effect on it. Then your fix of then that way they would need to go and have eyes on Orm the whole time, and then
Mhm.
it would make more sense to be like, okay, Mira, you handle this and I'll go get Orm,
Mhm.
and then have that buddy cop stuff. But like, yeah, like I guess like a lot of times when people are just like, I know people like the Spider-Man 2 video game, but like, where are the Avengers? And you're like, yeah, like this is a global issue. Why would his friends not have anything to say about this?
Mhm.
Even if the movie was focusing on his efforts, you would think there'd be some point where Batman's like, the fuck is going on with your people and the green smoke that
Yeah.
is having a global issue. This is not just, oh yeah, whatever town is next to Atlantis is having issues. It's like, no, this is global, and they made a point of showing you that by the different languages covering it at
Mhm.
like near in one of the montages.
The one thing that was interesting to me was they're like, okay, we heat shielded this facility so that they can't find how hot it is and therefore detect and find it. I'm like, but has nobody looked for the green smoke? That
Yeah,
they didn't talk about that at
I'm
all. There was no
assuming
like,
it's just like so far out from something that. But
it's
again, why would they
yeah.
they missed a very big thing. So yeah, I think they just missed that too.
Because if they were just like, oh, we stole the same technology that Wonder Woman's Amazonians use to hide the mascara and all that kind of shit, you're just like, okay, cool. I guess that makes sense. That could have been something that I would have gone with at that point because I'm just like, whatever, just throw whatever works. In it's yeah, but the whole Mara thing, you're right. Every part, every time you see her, she's doing the thing that saves the day. So you're
Yeah,
just like, all right,
and
well,
it looks
that's
cool. I can't
justifying
I can't
her
stress enough
being
how
in
much
this.
I liked her like coming at people with the water coming. Like I could have done without her like aiming the piss in his face, but like other than that, when she's actually like doing something serious, I was like, seems like this would have been great to have in the movie on a more
Yeah,
consistent basis.
yeah, because you're right. The visuals of her action does look really really cool,
Yeah,
and it's
because
just
for a big stretch of this, you're just watching them run around, and I'm like,
yes,
I this is not engaging to me. I was like, this is definitely, as you alluded to,
mm,
him doing his action adventure like Indiana Jones type thing. Sure, but like this is a long stretch of this. Like I don't know that to the point where by the time that they do have that trident fight, I'm like, oh right, so he does know he's doing a superhero movie. Got it. Okay,
yeah,
he just was taking a break for a bit.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That
It's
was the other thing too of like the deployment of Nicole Kidman. Like she's in the beginning, and you're like, right, yeah, it's his mom. But then at one point, she's just shows up again. She's like, oh, like I think her first line, I was like, oh right, like she's actually a character in this. Like they didn't just use footage from the beginning,
Mhm.
or they didn't just use footage from the first movie. Like I guess she's just in this movie. Okay, but it's
Yeah.
just like this weird thing of like, oh yeah, like I guess we need her to be in this for some reason.
Yeah, it's weird to me because I had to really think back in the middle of the movie. I'm like, did they break up at the end of the first one?
No.
Or at any given point in time, there was, and then when I like Arthur's dad and Nicole Kidman's character, because they got together again at the end of the first one,
Hmm.
and then just like, oh, y'all just not spending time together. What's going on here? Like, there was no the reaction of seeing each other again was not what you'd expect. It's like, oh,
What happened in
cool.
the first movie?
I know it happened here again. It's just like literally, it's the same energy as the first energy movie in the sense where wow, this is very flat for people that are like, you got together, you're in love by the second one, you're not spending any time together, and
I
when
don't
you
see what you
see each
mean.
other,
I don't think there would be that level in the second movie. They already had their reunion.
they did, but they acted like they saw each other a lot, and the movie just kept them apart a lot because at no point in those flashbacks or those scenes on land you're seeing like Arthur, um, Nicole Kidman, and the dad, the grandpa, I guess, in the situation, all like getting along as a family. It's just like no, it's very just they're trying to play up the single dad thing again, and I'm just like it's especially weird because of how off screen Amber Heard is in this. Where I'm like,
Yeah.
you're doing a village, like you said. You're getting the whole village, and this is still hard.
Um,
It's
I didn't see it that way. So I thought they handled that like as well as they were going to in terms of them like her taking family photos with them and stuff like that. Like
yeah.
I didn't see a place where they were gonna have this big like emotional reunion because it already happened.
Mm,
And then the amount of sorrow she had when he was another character that definitely should have died, but then didn't. Like when he gets stabbed
yeah,
and she's like kissing him. Like I thought that showed like yeah, like that's her
that's
love,
fair.
and she's upset. I didn't.
He should have
I don't
died.
think
I
this movie
agree.
needed more of them. Like I didn't like I don't know what that brings to focus on them specifically.
No, I'm just saying it was just one of those things where I'm like, I was so distracted by the fact I'm like, wait, did they break up? Is that why they're not spending time together in this movie at all? Or like, what's going on? And I'm just like, you know what? It doesn't matter. At this
Yeah.
point, it's just cool.
I don't think the movie was interested in couples
No,
like
it
that
was
because they spend as much time together as Aquaman and Mira.
yeah, yeah. There was more interested in brothers and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Um, the one, it's God, I just didn't know where this movie wanted to go. It's just like, what is the direction we're going in?
I think the movie is pretty straightforward. I
No,
don't
in
think
terms
there's
of
any
like,
ambiguity of like where what direction it's going in.
no, I
It's
mean in terms of like, is this horror? Is this kind of like pick a lane at some point, and it just never really did. And I'm like,
I
oh,
guess
cool, we're
that's what I'm saying
spoofing
is I
itself.
think it's the same as the first movie.
Yes.
But like no one has that complaint of the first movie.
And I think it's
Everyone
just,
acknowledges this is where he's doing his horror thing. This is where he's doing his adventure thing.
mhm. Yeah, I don't know. And maybe
It's
this is my fault for not listening to the rest of the people, but like, because the internet's usually not that great with its kind of
yeah, like
criticisms.
I don't like this movie. Like I don't think it's good, but I feel like people are like it's really shitting on this, and I'm just like I don't really get. And I think you've said it multiple times. Yes, there are the people that want the clickbait, like just take a strong stance and go
Mhm,
for it. So yeah, they're gonna say this is the worst movie ever. This is the worst superhero movie ever.
mhm.
I've seen people being like, this movie proves that superhero movies were a mistake altogether. Um, I get that that's
Wow.
for the engagement. I
Yes.
understand that. I think it's not a
Is
concern. I guess it just is
mhm.
what it is. But I just think that those are things you could say and not actually engage with the movie.
Yeah. I,
It doesn't show any deeper kind of engagement.
no. One thing I want to ask, two questions I had to ask myself, and I want to ask you is one, is this worse than The Flash? And
Yeah,
two, um, sorry, the first one was yeah.
yeah. I don't think. I don't even think there's
I can't
any
tell which
question
one's
about.
worse. That's why. I really can't tell which one's worse.
All
So I'm
right.
like, are they both on the same level of I don't care. I'm never going to watch this again. Not that I have. The only time I watched Aquaman 1 again, and to your point, I'm like, this is the same exact same movie. Same
I think
consistent
the
kind of thing.
ending really fucks it, but
Yes.
I don't think that they're worlds apart in terms of how goofy they can be, how like quickly they switch tones. I don't think they're worlds apart. They also did themselves a favor by keeping it to no real new characters. Like, I mean, there's side people who are new, but like everyone from the first one almost, who I guess everyone who didn't
Except
die
William
comes back.
Dafoe.
Everyone who didn't die comes back. So like, um, you can spend more time. Like, you can spend more time with Randall Park's character. You can spend more time. I don't know if you spend more time with Orm, but at least because he's in this again and not just a prolonged cameo, you actually get to see him grow as a character.
Well, he has a lot more. He has different stuff to do in this
Yeah,
as opposed
like
to just be the
I'm sure
villain.
he has the same amount of screen time, maybe a
Yeah.
little bit more, but like I think that those are all pluses. That it was like, yeah, we're
Mhm.
not going to try and like introduce Aqualad or something like that and take away from it. It was like, no, it's the same players, and some of them get to do more, some of them do less, but
Mhm.
it's the same players, so you know everybody already. You don't have to worry about that. Um, but yeah, like I don't. To me, think about all the positives we talked about the Flash, like the Michael Keaton of it all, like how much we appreciated that, how much
Mhm.
we appreciated an actor we don't like, but like the way they were able to play two characters.
Mhm.
I liked how they worked. I know she's not coming back, but Supergirl into it.
Mhm.
I think the movie does a lot wrong in terms of the cameos,
Mhm.
and I don't mean because they exist. I mean for stuff like showing Christopher Reeve standing and stuff like that. That stuff is wrong, but that doesn't. To me, that's not like an indictment on the story. That's just like, oh, that's terrible ethics. You shouldn't have done that. Like morally, you shouldn't have done that.
Mhm.
If we're talking about as stories, I don't see the same things that undo any goodwill in the Flash as do in Aquaman 2.
You're right. You're right. Aquaman 2 is not as offensive as the Flash is, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of good points and a lot of bad points in the Flash. They did a lot with it. This they didn't try anything offensive,
They
different,
didn't
or
take any
whatever.
swings,
No, they
and
didn't.
but again, that doesn't make it bad. I've we spent the first like 40 minutes talking about what I think makes it bad,
Mhm.
and it's not that it didn't take swings. It's me sitting there being like, what am I watching right now? Like, is this where I didn't feel that way with the Flash? Like the Flash just was like, I really like Michael Keaton Batman, and I thought that was a good send off to Michael Keaton Batman.
Mhm.
So that trumps like anything, or even me being like, I thought it was interesting how they were able to do this movie at this point and still get the Flash origin story in there without
Mhm.
you feeling like they were backtracking because it was part of the progression of the character of doing it
Right.
again. Like I thought that there was a lot more smart things going on
Yeah.
than there was in Aquaman 2.
Yeah, because Aquaman 2 just fundamentally betrays itself by not making
Yeah.
sense with the bloodline thing, like you said. And just like toward the end, it was like, I don't know if we're like parodying, I can't say that word properly, itself, the MCU. Like, like, is that final scene to me? I'm like, cool, we're ripping off MCU in two different ways now. The the Black Panther way, as well as the I am Iron Man thing. And I'm just like, this is not good.
No.
Do not like it. That scene really just sucked.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't think it. To me, there's not really a question of which bad. If you wanted to just be like morally, the Flash is wrong, then sure. Then there's nothing immoral really that I know of yet in
Here.
Aquaman 2. But if we're talking about story, just like my experience watching them, I if I didn't know about the Christopher Reeve thing, that would just be like, oh, what a waste of that.
Mhm.
Not really like, oh my god, like that is absolutely horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. That is, yeah, if you didn't, you wouldn't walk away knowing that for sure, unless you
Yeah.
knew that specifically about Reeves.
So
Um,
what was the second thing?
the second thing, oh God, what was the expectation you had coming into this?
That it would be
With the
bad.
unfortunate foresight, knowing that this is the end of the Snyderverse and all that kind of stuff. Like,
Oh no, that none of that stuff matters to me. I don't think
really?
I don't. Yeah, what do I like. I don't get paid by them. I don't like. It doesn't like matter really. Like these stories
Mm,
have to be able to keep
right.
going in different iterations,
Sure.
and I think everyone basically by Batman versus Superman was like maybe they should try this again. Uh, so they got what like 7 extra years out of this than they should have. Um,
Hmm.
I think I didn't expect anything to be good because of what I was hearing about test screenings. I think a lot of it was overblown, like people walking out in protest. Like I don't, again, I don't know how you say you like the first movie and then walk out of this movie in protest, but the fact that they weren't having good test things, the fact that I knew that they had two separate Batmen in this movie at one point and
Hmm.
they're not here now, and because of our connection with that shelf, knowing that the critics weren't seeing this until like a day before everyone else did.
Hmm.
Like, or that even if they saw it before, embargo wasn't until a day before people could see it, right? So, our embargo wasn't lifted until then. So, like,
Right.
that's not a sign of a company or what people were saying, which was when they went to the premiere with Jason Momoa, it was like there's no Q&A at the end. He's just there. Um, James Gunn didn't show up like he did for The Flash. They didn't do a
Hmm.
red carpet. This was definitely a movie they were just like, whatever, just put it out. Just put it out and
Yeah.
we're done with this.
Yep. Yep. It reeked of a movie that didn't have confidence in itself. And that's what sucked because when Blue Beetle was released, I felt that this movie was actually trying to do something, right? It was trying to tell a story at the very, very least. This was just like, "Ugh, we have to do contractual obligations. Like we have to make a movie. We've talked too much about this." And they were just like, all right, I guess it would be funny to pick apart. Or no, it would be funny to do MCU references within this, but yeah, I thought the exact same thing when you made that Loki point. I'm like, yeah, he definitely said Loki, and I get that Norse mythology, yeah, but like
Mm-hmm.
that's just riding a line right now. That is, why would you reference a more successful franchise within your franchise? Doesn't
Well,
make sense.
I mean, that's why I don't know. Like, I do think Jason Momoa is still having fun in this movie. Like, they let him do shit like that. Like, there's a lot of stuff he does that's like, yeah, I don't know how tied to the character that is so much as them just being like it's Jason Momoa, he's gonna do whatever he wants. Like
Mm,
there's the slap thing. I don't know the word he's using, but like he's like when he says you tell us what he want or you're gonna like he does something like that and says a word and he says it earlier in the movie, but it's not a
mhm.
threat. He just does it. I'm just like I think that's just him having fun. So when he does the Loki thing or the I'm Aquaman thing, I'm just like I think that's just how I find it's part of what I didn't like about Moon Knight. If we can bash Marvel for a bit, which was there was very clear rules kind of set up for how to know if the character Oscar Isaac is playing is going from different personalities, but then
Mm.
you hear like, oh, he was just doing it anyway, like however he wanted to. Like so, in that, I feel like there was a scene everyone was like, oh, like this is this new thing. And it's like you just find out, oh, he was doing like 3 or 4 characters in that. Like he was weaving in and out and just completely going off.
Mhm.
And you're like, I guess, yeah, like I'm glad they had fun, but it does kind of ruin the experience when you just let them go like that and don't
Yeah,
rein it in.
just like let's just improv within our character and see what makes the final cut.
Yeah, stuff like that where I'm just like, I don't know, like
I
there
agree with
should
that.
that's if you're a director, you should probably not be happy that that happened. It's just kind of
Yeah,
your job to rein that in
yeah, because
and
it's not
make
like
sure that you get what you need so that you have a cohesive thing.
yeah, because it's not like one of those moments where it's like Han Solo and Harrison Ford being like, "Hey, none of this sounds right. Let's let him riff. Let's do his things." Like I know, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, that
That's
became a
still
story. That became
based
a
on the
moment.
character. That I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
you
based on the
can say
character.
that's Harrison Ford, but you are like, yeah, Han Solo would say that.
Yeah, exactly. And no, what I mean is like." that was a moment where like, oh yeah, that's acting genius. But none of at this point it's like, oh, we're just letting Jason Momoa do Jason Momoa things on camera, and
Yeah,
that's it.
which
Which is the first one.
that was the idea, right? Like that was
Yeah,
like you're playing Aquaman because people like you, so you do what you do, and then
yeah,
people will like Aquaman.
yeah.
That's what I mean. Like that is the first movie. It's this movie, but it is just um part of why I'm not like I didn't love the first one, and I obviously don't really
Mhm.
like this one. But I don't think they're worlds apart. Is I guess my main takeaway.
You're
I
right, they're
think
not worlds apart.
I think obviously there's more cohesion to the first movie, which is why I think it's a
Mhm.
better movie.
Mhm.
But the way people are like dunking on this, I'm just like, I think that's just what internet film criticism has become. Is
Oh,
just like
100%.
there's just shit on this, and it's like, well, great,
Yep.
okay,
I mean, the first one was I think it was easier to have cohesion in the first one because it was like, okay, you're starting here and you have to get to here. At this point, so the end point is defined. They had to get somewhere. Here is like, listen, this movie just needs to end. So just it's starting all over again.
I
So
don't
it
agree with
just needs
that.
to end.
I think they both have very clearly defined endpoints. I think the first movie actually is harder because you're dealing with Justice League coming out first and setting up rules in that world that they didn't actually want to follow, and then having to work around
Yeah.
that, and having Amber Heard have a different accent in between movies and shit. Like I think this movie actually was easier because they were just like, all right, you saw the first movie, forget everything else.
Yep.
It's the first movie, that's what counts, and now
Mhm.
we're gonna dig our heels in. Yeah, I think the first movie was harder to get where it was, which is
Fair
why
enough.
it doing a billion, I can see them being like, "Oh, we're doing a sequel. Like, we
Mm.
can't believe we pulled that off."
Yeah.
But I, it's very clear they didn't think this was gonna make any money the way they dropped it, and just
Hmm.
like, whatever.
Yeah.
Just, just we don't care about this.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a rough one. This was not fun. Yeah, it was a rough one. I will say I enjoyed the 100% less Pitbull in the soundtrack of this one. That was
Sure,
an improvement. Just 'cause
I
I'm like,
guess so.
when they did the Pitbull thing, I'm like, this is so front and center. It's so weird.
I guess so. That's why.
That's, I mean, at this point, I'm just trying to like certain things about it because there's a lot I dislike about it.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I don't think. Uh, yeah, I don't think that did much for me, but I think you got to take the wins where you can, like Arthur
Yeah.
Curry's dad said. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It's true.
at least you're taking his advice.
Yeah. Because, I mean, when they had the invisibility cloak thing, and it's like,
Did
cool,
they
you have,
give that to Orm or not? Because I was like, isn't
no,
Orm
they did
wearing?
not.
Oh, okay.
Because
So
that's what he wears to break him out of it.
yeah, but why didn't we saw what it looked like before it went on Jason Momoa? Why couldn't they just give that to Orm? Like it's not like you'd be like, oh, it won't fit you.
No, 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 it totally would have. It was just one of those things where I'm like, yeah, you didn't even bother to bring water for him, so sure, like, yeah,
Oh,
you're just literally breaking him out.
that's the other thing I was gonna say that weirded me about the deployment of Nicole Kidman. She has this like emotional scene where she's like, "Can you tell him?" Even though it comes right off the bat of her being like, no, don't talk to that guy."
Mhm.
It's her being like, "Tell Orm I love him. I think about him every day."
Yep.
But I mean, even though like seconds before she was like, "Ugh, no, get him the fuck out of here, keep him away." But like she says it, and I forget that she said the first part. Um, and I'm thinking like, all right, we're getting this information now because Arthur's going to use that somehow to like not like to withhold it so that he can have like make Orm feel better or sorry make Orm feel worse or
Hmm.
something. But then he just says it at a random time.
Just like a brother. Oh, by the way, mom said this.
But,
I get that.
okay, so that works for you. I don't.
It worked for me in that sense where I'm like, okay, this is it, it's not like it was going to lead to something significant,
But it could
right?
have.
You're right. It could. What I
It
found
could
way
have been
more.
the information that took him out of the spell of like it could have been a part of a monologue that gets him out of from under the control of Black Trident King. Could have
Yeah.
it could have been something.
Mhm. It could have been. You're absolutely right. But instead, what they chose to do is go back to the first movie to be like, those words I said are still true. I'm like, oh yeah, you're now just changing the entire tone and intention of what you said. in the
Yeah, that
inference
didn't
of
make
what you said.
sense either.
That
When
was
he was like those
terrible.
words, he's like, "No, you meant that as a slight. You didn't mean
Exactly.
that in any positive way at all."
Exactly. They could have used those words like, no, this is like mom, and like, and I'm one of them,
It's like
people too.
you're
And
like,
like,
I didn't like you, and now I would risk my life for you, and you still have mom. She thinks about you every day. She loves you. This was a big point.
yeah,
Like I just feel like it was this weird sidelining of characters, and or
100%.
even if they had stated desires, sidelining that shit too.
It was definitely Nicole Kidman's character being consistent, and then Jason Momoa's character being consistent. I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm glad that had real no payoff or any weight to it. You're right, it could have, but this movie could have done a lot of other things. I did appreciate the fact that they're like, okay, turn that into a joke instead. I
Fair
liked it.
enough.
I
I
liked
did
it.
not. I thought that was bad. Uh,
I
but
liked it. I thought that was like, all right, yeah, that is something a brother would do. Haha, that's they got me there. That's something I'll enjoy.
yeah, I liked when
Cockroach thing
Orm
was
was
good.
like, "Oh, my dad." Like basically, I mean, stuff that I feel like even he said in the first movie, but he acts like is news to him in this movie. Like, wait, you didn't even want the throne? My dad was like preparing me that you were gonna like come kill me, and that's why I was training my whole life. Like that was funny when
Yeah,
that comes up, and then he's like, oh well, that's pretty embarrassing for you because I beat you with like no prep, and you had like a life of prep. So
yeah.
like that was funny and felt like brother stuff, but like it also was like revealing of like a pivot point for Orm to be like, oh, so like I don't really have to feel any way about you because my whole thing was based on assuming you want to take this from me.
Yeah. I believe the propaganda I was told,
Yeah,
and
and then
you
he's
don't
like,
even
oh,
want
like
it.
that's not what you want. It doesn't mean he has to like him, but he could just again drop the hate aspect of it,
Mhm.
which is why I really bumped against the whole this body has more hate for you than the person who's literally deteriorating trying to kill
Mhm.
you.
I agree. It would have been different if he just kept doing the whole like, "Hey, I'm gonna try to talk you out of the throne because I actually want it" kind of thing. Because I'm like, yeah, that's something that you should pivot to after being told that, yeah, I don't even want it. It's like,
Yeah,
oh,
he
this is how I
tried
can
it
get
for
it.
like one scene, and I was
Exactly.
like, this should be more of a tension. Like this should be
He
more
should have kept
conflict.
doing it.
Yeah,
I agree. It should have come up multiple times in that movie, and then it's just like, okay, well, stop
because
because
I
you
think they
get
landed on
why.
him being like, actually, I shouldn't because of what I did, and that's such a like that I wasn't loyal to Atlantis, and so like I feel like that's kind of where they had him because at one point he said something to that effect of like,
No, they landed on the fact that he's still one criminal by the Seven Kingdoms or something like that, or
yeah, but
the
what he says
whatever.
is I will go serve my sentence even when I'm done. Like you don't have to worry about that. Like
He did say that.
he's actively talking about why he thinks he deserves to be exiled and that he isn't right because of what he did.
Mm, yeah, like I said, the movie betrays itself.
I don't. I mean, that at least is consistent of him being like someone else should do it, but I know I shouldn't do it, which then would even fuel him even more to be like, you shouldn't do it. Like if I think I shouldn't do it, then you definitely shouldn't be doing it.
Right. It's weird because it's just like they show you during that scene where it's like, I was the one that won that battle. I'm like, yeah, you were the one that won that first battle. And that was like the one that was sanctioned and all that, the
Mm-hmm.
and all that kind of stuff. That was very, very clear cut. There was no like, oh, technically this happened. It was no, he's rightful heir to the throne and everything that he said. He just yeah, he was a dick in the first one.
Yeah.
He just
Um.
wanted to attack. And Arthur, like I it would have been funnier if Arthur was like annoyed him or teased him a little bit more. But I was like, yeah, I don't even want it and I got it. So like Big Brother stuff. But
Yeah. Well, he did it. I don't know where else you go from there. He already did that.
yeah, but it's weird. All
It
the
is.
things that you think this movie should do or would make it a little bit better, they're like, no, we're just gonna not do that
Yeah. I
because
mean,
you just they real like the first thing in the first like 10 minutes of the podcast that you said like it's orange blood. I'm like, yeah, that justifies the rest of the movie if you do it like if they just wrote that.
no, I don't
But
know.
no, no, none of it.
I really hope I'm proven wrong on that. Like I really
I
because
don't think you
it's
are
such an
though.
obvious mistake that it would be awkward for this like I'm assuming hundreds of millions of dollar movie to make would miss something like that.
I I don't think you are.
And it's not
I don't
I
think you're
don't think
wrong.
anyone's making this argument, but it wouldn't be like the whole Death Star having a vent that you can shoot into.
No, it's not.
That is something you can retrofit in Rogue One. There's nothing you can do to fix that issue in this movie. Like
There's
you can't be
literally
like,
nothing.
oh no, it's because of Jyn Erso's dad. He was the one that rewrote the Chronicles to make it seem.
Yeah. It's not like, oh yeah, in order to when he picked up this trident, it's like the blood infused with his or something. No, nothing like that.
No,
This is
it's
just bad. It's not well done.
no.
And one thing I don't think we talked about, Black Manta's death. I don't think we talked about Black Manta enough. I
Oh, that
liked
was a
the
Black Panther move when he's like, "No, I want." It didn't make sense in
It
this
didn't
case,
make sense at all.
but I was like, I see where they think they're going with this.
Yep. And it was just I don't think it was like, oh, at that point, especially if we knew that the evil king, the polluting king was controlling him and perverting his mind and all that kind of stuff. Once he snapped out of it, I was really hoping he'd be like, no, take his hand. Just it wasn't you doing all that kind of stuff, which kind of sucks because I'm like that leads to you not being that effective as a villain. And it's just like, yeah, Arthur punches him out
I
one
don't,
time. And,
I don't think that's what they were getting. I don't think that they're saying he was completely in control of him. I think they were
mhm.
saying he was creeping in and taking more control. But
Okay, fair enough.
the whole thing is whether or not he's taken control of by Black Trident guy, he's coming for Aquaman.
That's fair.
Like
Yeah,
because it's only in the like 5 month span that he has that control, but he still was doing all that shit beforehand.
that's true.
It's just he finally got the power to act out whenever he wanted to act out. But
Hmm.
um, I think it doesn't make sense because his thing isn't I live in an unfair world. His thing is I just want to kill you.
Yeah.
Not so like Killmonger's thing was like I hope realizing I did become what I hate. In addition to what he said about like I'm not going to live in this world where
Mhm.
I'm less than or whatever. Like I just kill me. I'm never
Mhm.
gonna stop. I'm not gonna feel a different way about this. This is him being like, oh yeah, I guess I don't have the power to kill you, but he could just keep trying. Like he could keep researching and figuring something out.
Yeah.
Like that's how comic books work. Is that he would find a different way to do it. So him being like never, I was like, take his hand, man. Just do it, and then fucking stab him in the back or something. I don't know. Like this is what a terrible decision.
Yeah. Because we got pump faked out of one betrayal. I'm like, no, we deserve a betrayal here. And it would have been
Honestly, I just wanted that movie to be done. I didn't. I did not need any more time
no,
spent
I
with it.
agree. I'm just I am talking about the bits that I'm like it bothered me that he did kill himself there
Yeah, I
at the
don't.
end.
I think that's a terrible decision.
Yeah,
It
I
just
agree.
was like, whatever. At least it's done.
I wasn't
I was really like, great. Okay,
yeah.
bye.
I clearly thought of it more from the perspective of like, oh yeah, you have a come to moment where you're no longer under the influence. But you're right to talk about no, it just enhanced what he thought. But at
Yeah,
this point, you could have just been like, hey, and I'll find another way to do it, buddy. But I will
that
take
is.
your
I
hand
was like,
here.
oh, that. Like you've been saying the whole podcast. Like it's really been undercutting its own setup.
Mhm.
And I feel like, yeah, that is a huge undercutting of Black Manta, which is like, you're supposed to think like he's so single minded that like he's just going to keep trying to find a way to get back at because he's just admitting, not admitting, I feel like he's just like, oh, I guess I'm just never going to avenge my dad. Bye. Like, and it's like, you certainly you have options. Like
You,
you 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 have options. Like this is not a no-win situation for
yeah.
you. That's the other thing. In the beginning of the movie, I genuinely was like, when they're trying to stop him from taking the whatever the unobtainium. I know that's not what it's called, but
Yeah.
like when they're trying to stop him, I'm like, no, let him take it. I want to see where this goes. I was actually just annoyed that they were like succeeding in stopping him from taking everything.
Mhm.
I know he got a lot of it, but he didn't get to take everything. I was like, leave him alone. Let him do this. I want to. I want to see. I want to see. Leave. Stop
That
bothering him.
that part was so stupid to me because, like, especially the part where he's like getting briefed, it's like, oh, he's hit every one of them already. I'm like, why is this the first time he's hearing about this now? Then, like, why is no one going around being like, hey, someone's hitting these, like whatever mines or storage facilities,
Because of
and
the
that's a
octopus. This is the
problem.
first time the octopus caught it. That's why.
I did like the octopus. I liked it a
I
lot.
found it weird that he didn't take Storm with him. I know Storm ends up
Yeah,
at the end of the movie, but like
sure.
he has this whole like narration of how like Storm is the most trusted character in the sea for him, and he loves Storm, and then they're like, "No, take the octopus," and I'm like,
Yeah.
He didn't even say I already have Storm," and like, or they didn't incapacitate Storm. He just was like, "Okay, I
Storm's
guess I'll."
the seahorse, right?
Yeah, I was like, why didn't he
Yeah.
want to take Storm? He just had a whole thing about how he loves Storm and he can't do anything without Storm.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason why is just because, like, oh yeah, this guy's actually espionage, the
Yeah,
octopus
but
instead of
they still
Storm.
have like scenes where they're like winded from having to swim and they're like on the beach like "Ah!" And I'm like that you know who would have helped with that? Storm.
Yeah, Storm would have helped with that.
You know how you wouldn't feel that way? Storm.
Yeah,
I'm not saying don't take the octopus. I'm saying it didn't make sense that he didn't also take Storm.
I agree. It's there's so much of this where I'm like, oh no. I guess the only reason why he wouldn't have taken Storm would have been like, hey, we this is a stealth mission, and you're kind of not that. You're a
Again,
glowing
they're
seahorse.
literally just swimming out in the open. Like,
Yeah, he
what
could
was
have had a
stealth about
drop
that?
off point to pick. You're absolutely right. Storm should have been a part of it because it's just
I
like this
I
is
think the reason is they
dumb.
forgot they had Storm until until later.
That's true. They're like, we need a visual. Let's
Yeah,
bookend this baby.
yeah, yeah. So even more stuff I didn't care for.
I
Uh,
mean, I just thought that the moment I saw that stuff in the trailer, I was like, oh, that looks goofy. It looks goofy in a very, very bad way.
to be honest, I thought the first movie's trailers looked goofy too, and I was right. So I don't think it was that big of a drop off for me, like
It's
in
not
terms
that
of
big
that
of a
kind of
drop
stuff.
off. I'm glad they're getting comic accurate stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, you're proving to me that there's no way that this is gonna look good.
Oh, his hands didn't look good in his green gloves. Like
Yep.
there's scenes where he literally can't like make a fist. He's like doing this weird thing. I'm like, oh my, why did they do this? Let's
Yeah.
take his gloves off. Take like I feel like even Black Manta doesn't have his gloves on. Although even if he's in the suit, he doesn't have the gloves on the whole time, so he can do stuff with his hands. I don't know why they did that to
Yeah.
Aquaman,
It's just such a weird thing.
especially since it all looks like CGI. I'm sure it isn't, but it just all looks like CGI. I'm like, this isn't even like looking realistic to me to the point where I'm like, well, they had to do it this way. It just
Hmm.
feels weird all over.
It feels like the people that complain about Green Lantern's suit should have more to complain about here, but I don't think we're going to hear about those complaints,
Yeah. Well,
which I don't know how to feel about, but because this is the CGI in this was so much. It was just so much. It's just so much.
I mean, again, same as the first movie.
I
I
know it's
really don't.
I had like I think I had the same complaint of the first movie, but it yeah, it
Yeah,
I found enough things that I liked about this, which, like you said, was the Trident fight, was the horror elements, and some of the jokes were good.
I would agree with everything you said, and I liked the visuals of Mira in particular. I thought that
Mhm.
was good. But yeah, otherwise, I think it's time to rate this movie.
Yep.
I'm going to give it a 5.5.
Mm, I'm going to a 4.
Excellent. I don't think it's that huge of a drop off from the other movie. I'm pretty sure I gave the other movie like 6, and I think it really blows up in the end. So
See, I will say I don't know what I gave the first movie. So that's why if you compare it back to back from a rating standpoint, it would be a huge drop off, I guess. I'm pretty sure I gave it a passing mark of like a 6 or something like that. But this is just like this was all types of bad to me. This was just it betrays its own logic. And because it and this is your fault. I would have been at a 5. But the first thing you said about the bloodline thing, I'm like, oh yeah, this movie is way worse than I thought it was.
yeah,
It should have been. And here's the thing too, it reminded me, and I didn't get to say, you're right. You don't need all the blood. You just need a little bit of the blood because he just spat out the blood and it's like, oh, cool, that'll activate it. So you're just like, okay, it's not like he needed to drain all the blood of
No.
whoever. Because you're right, it was just like a blood pact that he did the first time. He just cut his palm, and you're like, cool, that's great. We didn't even need all of it. This
Well,
is way worse. So
yeah,
four.
perfect. Well, thank you very much for listening, everybody. We are part of the That Shelf Podcast Network with other great shows like Bad Game Movies, Contra Zoom Pops, Springfield, Googleplex. So please go to thatshelf.com. You'll find those shows, our show, and more shows. And if you want to hear older episodes of our show, please go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten or on any podcast platform that you like to use. If you want to get in touch with us, we are at TDF Spoiled on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. And our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. So you've got options, just like Black Manta did. Don't throw them away like Black Manta did. Use your options. And yeah, we'll see you next time. I think the plan is to go through What If Season 2 next time you hear us. So that's something to look forward to. And if not, we'll have something. All right, bye-bye.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.